Good morning. You know, every time there's a bottle film out, I am always excited to see it, and the Jinn surprised me because I wasn't even expecting this kind of small indie bottle to come out at this point where everything is set in one apartment with one protagonist and takes place over the course of one night. And it was made during the very bad virus too. It's done by David and Justin, who apparently known each other since they were in kindergarten, fallen in love with the horror genre specifically from the 80s and 90s. They started to make their own movies that pay homage to those eras. Prior to this, they also did The Boy Behind the Door, which is coming out in July, I think, on streaming, which was done a couple of years ago but was pushed back until now. So Jinn can be seen as a supernatural entity or deity that is often associated with Islamic mythology and theology. If you're wondering why the name sounds so familiar, that's probably why westernized as a genie, where the appearance in Disney's Aladdin is the most ubiquitous in modern society, spelled Jinn instead of Jinn in Arabic. They can be summoned by a sorcerer, they can be good or evil, they can be invisible, they can fly through the air or shapeshift, and after all, the ones who take the form of a human. If you're interested in this particular subject, I would recommend checking out the video The Origins of Jinn by Mythology and Fiction Explained. In there, he goes more in depth on the lore of this thing. The link is in the description. So for the film, The Jinn is a disability bottle horror that follows a asthmatic and mute child and his single father who just moved into a new apartment. When the father goes to work as a late night radio host,
this next one is for a special little man in Burbank. Dylan, if you're listening, this one's for you.
the kid, Dylan, is left alone at home as he finds an old book that includes the instruction to summon a Jinn who can grant him any wishes he desires. It's one of those be careful of what you wish for sort of meme. It's cute, and I think the Jinn is very ambitious with what it's trying to do and what it ended up achieving.
Ghosts can't go through doors, stupid. They're not fire.
The horror at the core of the Jinn is the backstory of Dylan witnessing his mother killing herself in the middle of the night. He tries to call out to her, but due to his disability, he was unable to. A candle is blown out, and thus he blamed himself for it ever since. The horror is spawning off from the grief after a tragic loss. The Jinn knows how to push his buttons. He takes different forms throughout the film, at one point taking the form of Dylan's own mother just to trick him into calling out to her again. It is a visualization of the ghost that has been haunting him for some time. But he was able to confront the past because for the scene where we finally understand the real ghost that has been haunting him all along, it is implied how he doesn't have any ability to change the past no matter how close he got. As to why the mother unalived herself, it doesn't matter. What matters is how it affected Dylan as a character moving forward. If the candle going out is connected to the mother's death, then this time the candle going out is a symbol of wiping away that guilt. Literally speaking, the ghost of his mother is banished away. Since the film is so subjective, when it is revealed that Dylan was unable to leave the house no matter what, it really begs the question of if everything happening is really happening or is everything just in his head all along. The filmmaker spoke a lot about our fear as children and our psychological and physical loneliness when it comes to this. The candle will always be on if you're not strong enough to put it out yourself. And as for the scar that implies some sort of past surgery for his muteness, it becomes a strength as opposed to his trauma. Though it's pretty funny that the book bamboozled the hell out of Dylan, where on one hand they say,
"It may only be banished if the flame is extinguished after the stroke of midnight."
And after he put it out, homie sticks around for an after party regardless, taking his dad's voice in exchange for his own because, you know, there has to be consequences. And now it's unemployment time. The voice granted by the Jinn was used in the fantasy scene where Dylan calls out to his mother for the first time and him getting the resolution and forgiveness from his conscience. And to me, in my opinion, that is wish enough for a voice despite your muteness in reality. Because why wish for a voice if not to speak with your mother for one last time? At the end of the day, the Jinn is a warning to your wishes, for they may bring unintended consequences, and the only one who can make you better is yourself. Don't take things around you for granted and only focus on the things you don't have, because if so, you're never going to have what you don't, as everything you have is everything you're missing.
Since we were in an apartment and we had all these neighbors around, we didn't want to like freak them out with like this child screaming all the time. We were like, how can we avoid that? Because like realistically, he's always going to scream. And so we're like, oh, well, what if he's mute? And so that's where that like
Oh, wow.
came from, which then led to him being like, oh, it makes sense that he would then want to make a wish. And so like everything was built piece by piece from these limitations that we